G'day and welcome back to The Shed. I've often mentioned on this channel that I'm a big fan of religious themed science fiction novels, and perhaps no one does it better than Philip K. Dick. And a fine example of that is the novel I would like to take a look at today, A Maze of Death by Philip K. Dick, his 1970 novel. So what I would like to do, as always, is provide a spoiler-free plot overview. I'll talk to what I liked, what I didn't like, I'll make some recommendations, and I'll give this one a ranking. So the Pan Science Fiction edition I have here starts with an author's foreword that I really think sets the scene for this novel, because it says that, and I'll quote, that the theology of this novel, in quotes, stems from an attempt made by William Sarrell and myself to develop an abstract, logical system of religious thought based on the arbitrary postulate that God exists. So it's a rather interesting foreword that had me hooked right from the onset. So the plot revolves around these 14 colonists who have taken a one-way trip to this planet called Delmark O. They're not known to each other, but they all have unique backgrounds. They've all even made some kind of prayer to this deity that is made up in this theology here. And this God is real, right? The postulate is that this God exists and you can actually send prayers to them. So some of these colonists send prayers because they're disgruntled in their roles or in their current jobs, and they find themselves, summoned in many ways to this planet, to this Delmark. So as these 14 colonists are introduced to each other, they're also expecting this satellite communication to describe the purpose of the colony and their purpose within the colony. But as the transmission starts, it starts to sort of glitch out, and it appears that there's been some kind of sabotage and the satellite communication drops dead. Now, this sort of puts all the colonists a bit on edge, thinking, well, what's going on here? What is our place here? And to make matters worse, we start to find that some of the colonists are mysteriously murdered under some really dark and mysterious circumstances as well. And in typical Philip K. Dick fashion, there seems to be a whole lot of paranoia and mistrust between these colonists as they're trying to understand what their purpose is and why these murders are taking place and who is out to get them. So there's a whole lot of typical Philip K. Dick, paranoia going on here within the colonies. So the question really begs, if there is this God and he's all-knowing, why is he not answering our prayers? Why is he allowing these murders to happen? Are we under attack? And if so, who's behind these attacks? All is to be revealed in this really fascinating novel by Philip K. Dick that I thoroughly enjoyed. So what is there to like in Philip K. Dick's A Maze of Death? For those of you who have been watching this show for some time, it's probably no surprise that the big appeal for me was that theology concept. I like the theology in this because it takes hints of Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism and Islamic faith and sort of combines it into what is a really unique religion that sort of has woven itself into this storyline. And I also like that premise, right? The postulate that there is a God and you can actually communicate with him, and what would that communication look like. And it was really interesting, fascinating concept that I thought went a really long way to making this one a very enjoyable read for me. I also enjoyed the mystery in this novel, right? And I like the way that Philip K. Dick executed on that mystery by, introducing all these different characters' different points of view through the narrative that sort of had you guessing all the way as to what's really going on here, who's after these people, and what's actually really going on. So I did like the plot, I did like the mystery behind the plot as well. So I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan. You can probably tell that there's quite a fair few Philip K. Dick novels behind me here. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe and notification bell, because I will be getting to those over the years, and that way you won't miss out. But what makes me the big Philip K. Dick fan is the fact that he's always challenging, the concept of reality versus perception. So what is real and what is perceived? And I think he does this wonderfully again in A Maze of Death, constantly challenging those perceptions and reality aspects. And sometimes, especially in his later novels, that reality and perception is just all twisted and messed up, right? It makes it for a really interesting read. And as always, I really like, I think I've said it in the past, I think Philip K. Dick has just got a wonderful vocabulary that I often find myself reading with a thesaurus, because it uses not words necessarily that I don't know, and they're not like extravagant or archaic in some ways, like we find, for example, in Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. It's not that. It just uses words that are just perfect for the situation. And sometimes, even if I do appreciate and understand those words or familiar with the words that he uses, I always go back to a thesaurus just to really immerse myself in those words. I think he's a wordsmith, Philip K. Dick, and he probably doesn't get the recognition for that as he ought to. I just love his use of language. The other thing I really enjoyed in this novel is the ending. I think it's a really interesting ending, and I'm not going to talk any more about it because it is definitely an interesting one. So what is there not to like in Philip K. Dick's A Maze of Death? Look, the novel is 185 pages, 189 pages. It has a made-up religion, and it's got a cast of 14 different characters with a really cool premise. That's a lot to pack into a 189 page novel, and I think something's got to give. And in this particular case, I think what did give was those characters. I found that we are constantly switching from different points of view of these characters. We don't really get to know the characters well, and there's a lot of them, so we don't get that intimacy that you would expect with these characters. So they're a little bit shallow, and sometimes their motivations are not quite understood. So I would have to say that, yeah, look, don't come into this expecting some really great character development. It's just not that. But I still thoroughly enjoyed the characters. That's an interesting thing about this one. But I'd have to say that plays second fiddle to the plot and to the idea of this one. So look, that's pretty much it for me. There's not really much else I can nitpick because I thoroughly enjoyed this. And when it comes to recommendations, I can't recommend this novel enough. So if you're one of those people like me that likes your religious themed science fiction novels, then I think if you haven't already read A Maze of Death, definitely have a go at it. PKD is fantastic when it comes to blending those themes, and I think this is definitely no exception, one that I thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, definitely have a go at that one. But when it comes to similar novels that you may have read in the past, as I was reading through A Maze of Death, it sort of did take me back to Hyperion. There's elements of that sort of Pilgrim's Tale in A Maze of Death as well. So I would say that if you've enjoyed books like Hyperion, that classic pilgrimage to the world Hyperion here with those protagonists telling their tale, there's an element of that in A Maze of Death as well. So if you've enjoyed Hyperion, I dare say that you may enjoy A Maze of Death as well. As I was reading it, I also got glimpses of Frederick Pohl's Gateway. You know, the mystery that we have in Gateway with the Hichi, those spaceships, the way they were used, I got similarities from Gateway as I did reading Maze of Death. So I think if you've enjoyed Gateway by Frederick Pohl, I say have a go at Maze of Death. I think you would enjoy that one as well. So as a ranking on Goodreads, I think I gave it a 4, but if I had a choice, I'd probably make it a 4.5 or 4.2 to 4.5 out of 5. A thoroughly enjoyable read, just a quick short read that I thoroughly enjoyed. As always, thank you for spending time with me in the shed, and I'll see you next time in the shed.